안녕하세요. 김원장 인사이트입니다. 테슬라 주가가 15%나 폭락했습니다. 이 정도 하락이면 역대급 하락입니다. 제가 수없이 말씀드린 바와 같이 단기적으로는 주가를 예측할 수가 없습니다. 예상치 못한 일들이 계속 벌어지기 때문입니다. 트럼프가 효율성 부서에서 하는 일이 불필요한 사람들을 잘라내다 보니 반발이 거세지면서 미국에서 테슬라 차량에 대해 불을 지르는 등 사태가 험악해지고 있고, 유럽에서도 판매량이 급감했다고 합니다. 그 이유는 이전 영상에서 말씀드린 바와 같이 모델 Y 리프레시 모델을 출시하면서 일시적인 현상입니다. 3월 판매량부터는 점차 정상화될 것으로 보입니다. 4월 초 1분기 인도량이 예상보다 낮게 나오면서 조정이 있을 수 있고, 4월 말에 1분기 실적 발표 때는 모델2 저가형 모델 출시와 6월부터 언슈퍼바이저 로보택시가 출시되는 등 가이던스가 좋게 나오면서 증시가 정상화될 것으로 예상됩니다. 오늘은 아크인베스트의 투자 분석 디렉터인 토시야키니가 블룸버그 TV에 출연하여 테슬라의 로보택시와 옵티머스 로봇 등 앞으로 성장성에 대해 인터뷰하는 영상을 요약해드리고 마지막에 함께 보도록 하겠습니다. 중요한 얘기가 있으니 인터뷰 영상을 끝까지 꼭 보시기를 권합니다. 테슬라와 그들이 어떻게 전기차와 자율주행 기술을 통해 자동차 산업을 혁신하고 있는지에 대해 이야기해 보겠습니다. 테슬라는 단순한 전기차 제조업체를 넘어 자율주행과 AI 기술을 선도하는 글로벌 리더로 자리 잡고 있으며, 그들의 미래는 매우 흥미롭습니다. 먼저 테슬라가 가진 강점 중 하나는 바로 그들의 수직 통합 전략입니다. 차량 생산부터 배터리 기술, 소프트웨어, 그리고 자율주행 시스템까지 모두 내부에서 개발하고 있다는 점입니다. 이를 통해 테슬라는 다른 경쟁사들에 비해 기술 개발 속도가 빠르고 비용 절감 또한 가능하게 되었습니다. 특히 자율주행 기술은 테슬라가 전 세계에서 가장 앞서가는 분야로 이미 수백만 대 차량에서 실시간으로 데이터를 수집하고 이를 기반으로 시스템을 계속 개선하고 있습니다. 테슬라의 자율주행 기술은 그들이 경쟁사들과 차별화된 핵심 요소입니다. 예를 들어 웨이모와 같은 자율주행차 관련 기업들은 새로운 도시에 진입할 때마다 해당 지역의 데이터를 수집하고 이를 통해 시스템을 훈련시켜야 합니다. 그러나 테슬라는 이미 수백만 대의 고객 차량을 통해 실시간 데이터를 수집하고 있으며 이 데이터를 기반으로 빠르게 기술을 발전시키고 있습니다. 이러한 데이터 우위는 테슬라가 자율주행차 기술에서 경쟁사보다 한 발 앞서 나갈 수 있게 해주는 중요한 요소입니다. 그리고 로보택시의 출시는 테슬라의 혁신적인 기술이 상용화되는 중요한 이정표입니다. 로보택시는 자율주행과 전기차의 결합으로 기존의 차량 호출 서비스를 한 차원 높은 혁신으로 이끌어낼 것입니다. 테슬라는 2025년까지 로보택시의 네트워크를 구축할 계획을 가지고 있으며 이를 통해 수조 달러 규모의 새로운 시장을 창출할 것으로 예상됩니다. 2025년까지 자율주행차가 본격적으로 상용화되면 수백만 명의 고객이 테슬라의 로보택시 서비스를 이용하게 될 것입니다. 테슬라가 갖춘 또 다른 강점은 바로 글로벌 시장에서의 입지입니다. 미국을 비롯한 유럽, 중국까지 전 세계에서 전기차와 자율주행 분야의 리더로 자리 잡고 있습니다. 이들은 수직 통합된 생산 시스템과 대규모 데이터 수집을 통해 기술 혁신을 이끌어내고 있으며 미래의 자동차 산업의 핵심적인 역할을 할 것입니다. 테슬라의 미래는 매우 밝습니다. AI, 자율주행, 전기차가 결합된 혁신적인 기술은 단순한 자동차를 넘어서는 서비스와 새로운 시장을 열어갈 것입니다. 로보택시의 도입과 함께 테슬라는 차세대 이동수단을 통해 자동차 산업을 다시 한번 혁신적으로 변화시킬 것입니다. 이들은 비용 절감, 기술 발전, 상용화의 전 과정을 선도하며 글로벌 리더로서의 입지를 더욱 확고히 할 것입니다. 테슬라의 자율주행과 전기차 기술의 발전은 향후 자동차 산업뿐만 아니라 모빌리티 산업 전반에 걸쳐 큰 영향을 미칠 것입니다. 이들이 만들어가는 미래는 혁신적이며 스마트한 이동의 시대를 열어갈 것입니다. 오늘 영상에서는 테슬라가 어떻게 전기차와 자율주행 기술을 선도하며 그들이 앞으로 로보택시와 같은 혁신적인 서비스로 자동차 산업의 패러다임을 어떻게 바꿀지에 대해 이야기해 보겠습니다. 앞으로도 테슬라의 기술 혁신과 미래 비전을 계속해서 지켜보시면서 더 많은 정보와 분석을 원하시면 채널 구독과 알림 서비스를 꼭 설정해 주시기 바랍니다. 지금부터 전체 인터뷰 영상을 함께 보시겠습니다. 끝까지 꼭 보시기를 권합니다.
High-flying mega tech stocks and their chip-making cousins were powering the Nasdaq 100 index to yet another record. But the feast now appears to be over. The index tumbled 2.8% on Thursday. Let's get to Toshiyakini, Director of Investment Analysis at Akreinves트. Ark manages several actively managed exchange-traded funds and invests extensively in tech stocks. Tasha, good to have you with us. Not too long ago, we were talking about how, the Mag 7s, they're invincible, but of late, maybe, the story no longer stands. What's your take?
Well, you know, at ARC, we're long-term investors. We look out over the 5 to 10-year time horizon here. So I'd say broadly, you know, we're still very bullish on innovation. You know, there's been a lot of talks of the new administration, of course, for technologies that we look at, for instance, autonomous vehicles. If the regulatory path is streamlined for robo-taxis, which we think could be largely beneficial, they'll save lives. We think, you know, the market opportunity is measured in the trillions. That would be a good thing. So I'd say that, you know, long term, our focus is still there. You know, short term, I think there could be some uneasiness, but overall, we think that, you know, we're still very bullish on innovation broadly, on all the tailwinds that we've been seeing from AI over the past year. So I'm excited about it.
Is it uneasiness or is it panic? I mean, we have NVIDIA slumping 20% in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now, right? And we'll likely get a lot of answers as there's sort of more clarity on, you know, we saw today there's some back and forth on tariffs. We haven't quite gotten the end state yet, and we'll likely get those answers, and that'll, I think, lead to some settlement here. But again, I think broadly we're excited about innovation. You know, I mentioned robo-taxis could be a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity here. You know, we've seen drastic improvements in AI. Autonomous logistics, another area that I look at. This is really the year for autonomous transportation. I mean, in the U.S. here, we're going to see driverless trucks hitting the roads very shortly, any day now. Drones as well, delivering packages for, you know, a fraction of the cost of today's transportation effort. So, you know, innovation broadly can lead to positive deflation. So I think, you know, letting that innovation, you know, again, easing the path to letting that innovation come to its full fruition is a good thing.
Well, Tasha, long-term investors have to look at near-term developments as well, because that may dictate what happens in the long run. When you take a look at the AI space, the big tech space that you're in right now, is China, in fact, upending that AI trade? How much of this has to do with developments in China, in AI?
Yeah, you know, this is a market that we're closely watching. Of course, we're seeing the economy turn around there. You know, it's interesting to see the developments that we're seeing out of, you know, the DeepSeek R1 model, for instance. We still see, you know, U.S. Large language models on a performance basis, depending on what benchmark you look at, surpassing their Chinese competitors. But I'd say that broadly the story is that, you know, AI training costs are coming down. This should be beneficial for the whole industry. It'll certainly be beneficial for areas like robotics and embodied AI. So I think that, you know, that's something that you can say broadly, that, you know, despite sort of these fears of Chinese competition, like globally, where are we headed here? You know, AI is going to boost productivity, and that's overall good for the economy. And, you know, we still see the U.S. as a leader in many of these areas.
So given the optimism that you hold, would the sell-off be a buying opportunity for you? Would you be picking up more NVIDIA shares, for instance?
Well, I can't say specifically about any future trades that we would make. But, you know, I will say that, again, we look broadly at innovation. You know, I actually particularly focus on the robotics space here. So as NVIDIA pertains to robotics companies, you know, it powers autonomous cars. Companies like Tesla have decided to make their own chips in-house. But NVIDIA is still, you know, the top choice for many players that are unable to make their own inference chips. And so I think that, you know, relationship will likely hold for the, you know, the near-term future here for, again, one of the largest markets that we see in AI.
We're obviously looking at a repricing in the growth stocks like NVIDIA and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering, how are you looking at this, how this might play out?
Yeah, so, you know, in general, we use certain price swings as opportunities in our portfolios. You know, I think that we look, I can't say anything about what we would do about immediate trading activity here. But I will say that we are, you know, bullish on this is the year for innovation. It's the year for robotaxis, as I mentioned. We have companies like Tesla that plan on launching these platforms. Tesla plans on launching in June. So I think these are a lot of important catalysts that we have to look forward to later in the year. So I look forward to those.
Okay, let's take a look at the themes and the kind of stocks that you're looking into. You talk about innovation, you talk about robotaxis. We're looking at those in the Chinese market as well. There are big players there, and it does seem like optimism is returning in the market that this is the place to be. Would you perhaps relook at some of these stocks in China? I mean, at one time you were a buyer, Akreinvest was a buyer of Chinese stocks.
Yes, we do still own some Chinese names. BYD is one of them, for instance, in the electric vehicle space. But I'd say broadly, we're monitoring this activity. If you look at, for instance, the auto market, and as I mentioned, robotaxi is what we think will be one of the biggest opportunities here. Price competition in China is fierce, and I think it'll continue to remain so. I mean, the price of ride hail on a U.S. equivalent basis is roughly 30 cents per mile. In the U.S., you have a nice price ceiling of around $2.50 per mile for technology companies to launch driverless cars. So that's a tough market to come into no matter what player you are, even if you have amazing technology. So I do still think we'll see some of those, we're taking a case-by-case look at the different technologies that are covers to find those opportunities. But again, it's something that we're closely watching. I mean, these are real competitors here. Obviously, China's a very important market, and we'll have to see.
Are you concerned about risk from the regulatory landscape? Perhaps Trump could clamp down on U.S. companies holding stocks in Chinese companies?
Again, on policy, we'll have to see where it plays out. I think, our founder, Kathy Wood, I think she'd say that Trump, he is ultimately going to be judged by the economy. That's the benchmark that he will be measured on. So she thinks that he'll be, careful in terms of which policies he rolls out, and in terms of thinking about that. So, right now we're seeing a fair amount of negotiation happening on the back end of these deals and announcements that we're seeing. It's still, again, in flux, as we saw from today's tariff announcements. So we'll have to see. But again, we're looking at it as a real market in terms of certain technology leaders. Price competition very fierce there. It's always going to be. We'll have to see how the policies play out.
We've been talking about robotaxi, and that's a big idea for 2025 for ARK. I'm just wondering how best to play this. I mean, Tesla, obviously a big player in it, but, lots of questions about whether it will do it alone and whether it can do it alone.
Well, I think that's, that's actually Tesla's special sauce, really, is their vertical integration strategy. The fact that they're a vertically integrated auto manufacturer here. They're developing the technology in-house. They're building compute in-house. They're building, the humanoid robots of the future. That's a real competitive advantage, because if you look at other players, say if you're not an automaker and you have to partner, getting to scale is a different equation for you, right? Because then you're buying vehicles at cost to put on the road. You're having to negotiate relationships with automakers in order to do so. So we think that the software companies, the technology companies here will be the winners. And Tesla's a clear leader. They already have scale because they have customer cars on the road that are collecting data. If you look at the number of miles of data that we think that Tesla has access to versus a player like Waymo, which is Alphabet's effort, that's roughly, 100,000 miles, say, per day versus 10 million. So it's an order of magnitude difference there. So I think that data advantage is really critical for Tesla. So that's what we think will give them a lead in this space.
So one analyst did say that in order for Tesla to be a real player in the space, it has to transport about 100,000 customers in a week. And so far, it hasn't come close to that, or else it becomes just a fiction. How soon do you think Tesla will get to that?
Well, I think A few things. The measure of progress, we're looking for the June launch of the robotaxi network. That's what Tesla's promised here. I think that, we know that they've been testing the service in California, and they plan to launch in Texas. They could launch in both states by the end of the year, potentially. What does initial successful launch look like? Tesla actually has a different strategy than others because they don't have a geo-fenced solution. So when Waymo goes to a new city, they have to, unleash cars on the road, gather data from that experience, and then become comfortable enough to really start the commercial service. For Tesla, it's different because they get information and data from customer cars on a daily basis that travel all over the U.S. and really all over the world, which could set them up for, potential future international launches here. So I think that success will look like them launching as promised in June, and they could actually be one of the first players to scale because they have millions of cars on the road. They could potentially pull from those as customers may choose to sign their vehicles up for the fleet, or they could pull from production vehicles and sort of make that choice depending on consumer demand at that point in time. So the point is, they have access to and will have access to really vehicles that number in the millions versus their peers, which at most have vehicles in the thousands, really. The last recorded number that we got from Waymo is less than 1,000 cars. Perhaps they have more now, but that just gives you an idea of the scale that Tesla has versus others. So once they lower the cost per mile to below that of human ride hail, I think that's when the service really takes off. So I'm excited for that future, and I think that Tesla could be the first company to do this at scale.
Right. You're invested in Tesla. You're also invested in BYD. How do you compare the two?
Yes, well, BYD is, of course, a leader in electric vehicles. Broadly, electric vehicles are taking share and will continue to take share from gas combustion cars because we believe that they're writing down a rights law, which says that for every cumulative doubling in production, you get a corresponding reduction in price. They have a more attractive cost decline curve than gas-powered cars. It's a newer technology. So despite the recent pullback that we've seen in the market, longer term, that's the real story with EVs. And of course, BYD is a leader in China. Versus Tesla, they don't have the software edge. For instance, they're launching assisted driving features on their vehicles. They're not launching robotaxi services. That's where I think the real market opportunity is here. The autonomous ride-hail opportunity is what I think will be measured in the trillions versus these add-on services that you sell with consumer cars. So I think that they're very well positioned in the electric space. The future of the auto industry is really autonomy plus electrification.
Right.
So that's what Tesla has.